once again. Thank you all for joining us every week. This is Nuance, and I am Mike Scala, joined as always by Jay Carter, also known as Timid. He's the hip hop MC and chair of BLM Tokyo. What's going on, Jay?
Not much. Just still in the States.
Yeah, extended your trip and celebrated your birthday this past week, right?
Yeah. So that was a good thing. My mother, she made a cake that I hadn't had since I was a child. So it was pretty good.
Very cool. Hope you had a very happy birthday, and I'm glad you're still stateside.
Yeah,
I'm also glad to be joined by our special guest. In fact, something of a correspondent now, because you're live on the scene. Helene Leskin of the Beach 92nd Street Community Refrigerator. How are you, Helene?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing very well. And we hope someone maybe will stop by and talk to us. It's really cool that you're out there right by the fridge.
Yeah, I thought that would be a good place to do it instead of sitting in my apartment talking about the refrigerator.
Makes sense. We definitely want to talk about that in a few minutes. I do want to start off by making a very important announcement. Jay, I know you're going to be interested in hearing this.
Uh-oh.
I am announcing that I am dropping out of Harvard Medical School. I am also dropping out of the U.S. Olympic team for volleyball, and I'm dropping out of the 2024 presidential race.
It's good to know.
Yes.
You know, I was a little concerned there. I didn't know what you were going to do one way or the other. So,
yeah. Would you like to drop out of some things that you were never in, Jay?
Yeah, why not? You know, I'll drop out of the space race. I'll drop out of the Miss USA competition and Miss Universe. I was going for both of those.
I have a money on you. It's a disappointment.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, here's something I wanted to bring up really quickly. I was dealing with this earlier today. My mother was actually scammed. Apparently, someone opened up an AT&T phone or account and bought a phone in her name, and she got the bill sent to her. But it was sent to her address that she moved from, but she has her mail forwarded, so she received it, and it turns out to be legit. At first, I thought that the bill itself was a scam, maybe an attempt to get her to call up and give information. But no, we took it to the AT&T corporate store. They confirmed it was a real bill and an account that was opened in her name. Now we're trying to figure out how that happened. They said someone would have had to have her name, her social security, her information, date of birth. We don't know who that is. They're saying it's probably someone she knows, but we can't think of anyone who knows her who would do that. It's a very weird thing. And now apparently it's kind of complicated to get this account closed. We have to go through the fraud department and file reports and do all these different things.
Right. And then any monies that are owed, if, you know, she would have to file that, identity theft claim. Otherwise, AT&T is going to, or whatever it was, maybe it wasn't AT&T, whatever phone thing, they're going to hold her responsible for the money. Right.
And they're saying now that she should freeze her credit so that people can't charge her or do anything with her credit without her consent.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's a mess, you know, and I was doing some research on it. Apparently it's a thing that happens. Sometimes the bill that you receive is a scam, which is what I thought it was. I thought it was like a phishing attempt, essentially, right? With a fake bill. But I guess also people get your information. They'll sometimes open accounts in your name, phones and whatnot. Apparently they're charging a very expensive iPhone to her name, and there's a phone number associated with it and everything already.
Can't they just shut the account down?
But apparently there's a process. They gave her a link. They couldn't do it at the store. They said she's got to go on the website, the fraud department, file a report. And, you know, it's not like this instantaneous thing that you would expect it to be.
Right. I mean, it would at least stay up until the end of the month, because you usually pay like a month in advance or something like that. But call the number.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. We should call it like live on here, right? That'd be cool. And apparently it's a Long Island number too. But what was weird is in the store, when we went to corporate earlier, they pulled up the account and they said they couldn't really find out much information on it. And they were a little puzzled by it. They said usually it tells you all the information on when it was open, how it was open, when was the last time it was accessed. They have all this data. They said that the page didn't really have any data on it. It was just bare. It just had my mom's information. So they were kind of confused as to how it was even opened. Maybe it was online overseas somehow. They said if you do it in person, you have to actually have an ID also. But if it's online, I guess you can just put in information. And I don't know how they got that from my mom either.
Right. You need a social security number, generally to do that. So someone
Yeah.
would have had to have access to it or have gotten it somehow. Does she have another account with that same company?
No, that's AT&T. She's never had any account with AT&T ever. And that's why she was also suspicious, because when she called up, they were asking her for her social. And she's like, wait a minute, why do I need to give you my social? You guys don't know who I am in the first place. Now she's thinking maybe the people that she's calling are trying to scam her, because I guess she went online to find the number, and then she's thinking, is that a fake site, the number that I found? So she's not trusting anyone at this point.
Right.
These people are really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because seniors get these things all day long. I get receipts for something I bought from Amazon, which doesn't exist. It's pretty awful.
Yeah, and they're going to get even more and more sophisticated. We're seeing it's starting now because of you've seen the acceleration of AI technology. I can go in and I can take all the old sessions, the rap sessions and stuff, recordings of you, Mike, the acapellas, and I can train AI to speak in your voice and then call your mom with your voice, and she would think it was you.
Wow. And we saw also the story of AI hiring someone to complete a captcha, was it?
Right. That was the new GPT-4 that's supposed to be way more advanced than the GPT-3 that everyone's been using, and this has better reasoning skills. And so what happened was when there was a security company trying to test AI's limits and capabilities to make sure that it can't do bad things. And so they were able to hook it up to some other process so that it could access the real world. And they got it hired a human being off of one of these gig sites like Upwork or Fiverr. It was a different one, but hired a human being on there and to pass a captcha for them. And the human being actually got suspicious and asked the chatbot in the exchange, like, are you a bot? And it reasoned that it was best to lie in order to get the outcome that it wanted. So it lied, said no, it wasn't a bot. And eventually it went through, it hired the person, and the person did the work for him.
How did it get the money to hire the person? Had a credit card?
I don't know. I didn't see, there weren't any details on that part there, but I guess if you connected to like a wallet or something, connected to a PayPal or a Cash App or something like that, then it could just transfer it.
Yeah, that's scary. All that is very scary. It needs to be checked.
We're at the beginning.
Yeah.
So
I always tell people to be careful with that. I used to get people coming in also to the Senate office when I was working in the Senate with all kinds of scam attempts, but they didn't know. They were just scared. They would get a letter, either it was a threatening letter or something that looked like a bill or something that got their attention, and they would bring it in. Luckily, oftentimes they would come in and ask, is this legitimate? What should I do here? Oftentimes it was too late. They just were trusting what they received and they were scammed. And then it was a matter of damage control. But it does happen very frequently.
It does. And people are going to have to be a little bit more vigilant, especially going forward with the new technology. I've always kind of imagined creating a course, especially for people who didn't grow up at the internet, of things that they should look out for, or they should be aware of when things happen. Like Helene mentioned about people getting all these messages, a simple email coming through and there's a link and looks like it comes from an account that you have. You click that link and it's going to something that looks like the official thing, but it's really not.
Right.
So,
and they get pretty creative. I've seen something like Verizon Wireless, right? But the L was a capital I. And so it looked like the right domain, that kind of thing, right? Where it's really tricky sometimes to spot it.
Right. Yeah. So it's like the one of the main tips there is just never click any links that come in your email. If you're like with Verizon, for example, you go into and you type it into the address bar yourself.
Right. But there was a really sophisticated one that my mom almost got tricked by a while ago, where I think she was trying to get Amazon Prime on her TV. And then she had to put in the code on her computer to hook up her account. But somehow the scammers got in the middle of it, and she ended up going on the website and they started asking her for her personal information on a website. Like somehow the scammers put an ad or something on top of the legitimate site, so that even though it looked legitimate because she was doing it through her TV and the TV gave her a link, she went to that link and that was somehow taken over by the scammers. And so that's really easy to get tricked because it seems real.
Sometimes if you type in the wrong letter, if you're one letter off, it goes right to some scam site.
Right. But this wasn't one letter off. This was the exact link that was on the TV. She showed me, I saw it. It was the right link, but somehow the scammers had put something on top of it. I think they somehow like put an ad maybe on, and they put their information on top of the legitimate page so that she would type into their window.
Yeah. In cases, that could sound like a potential virus on the computer that just goes ahead and looks at whenever you go to the site to inject something in there. There's a variety of these scams, and like Helene said earlier, these people are very good too. They're good at what they do.
Right.
They're good.
Right.
They're really good, because I got one that I had a subscription to, some sort of antivirus, and they were going to charge me like $700 or something, and I didn't click. What I did was I went to the site of the antivirus, and it was connected with something else, and it looked legitimate. And, I said, did you guys send me this? I never ordered this. And, they looked and they said, no, just, delete it. But, somebody who's 80 years old who opens up their computer, who doesn't know better, is just got scammed.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it happens a lot. It's going to get worse because, like I said, with the AI and the voice technology, now someone that with the voice can call you, be like, hey, your voice could call your mom and say, Mom, I'm kind of stuck. I need some money. Can you transfer this money really quickly?
That's terrible.
And it sounds terrible. Like you. And so, I think we're all going to have like personal passwords with each other or something.
Right. There's one also where they'll call you and they'll say, we want to lower your interest rate on your credit card or whatever. And it seems legit. But then what they do is they try to trick you into giving up your credit card number a little at a time. Like they might have some of the digits already. And like, we just need, the last four. Can you turn the card over and read the last three on the back? And like, they ask you a couple different ways to try to string together your entire number.
Yeah.
Be careful, everyone. Just be very careful with all that stuff. And like Jay is saying, it's only going to get more sophisticated now with new technologies that are emerging. So
absolutely.
We did want to talk, obviously, about the fridge. That's why we have Helene on. Listeners and viewers of our show will recall back in November during Thanksgiving, we had some extra turkeys and we were able to stock this fridge. I think it's a great thing. It's on Beach 92nd Street in the Rockaways. And Helene, why don't you tell us a little bit about the fridge and how you got involved with it?
This refrigerator started, or actually all the community refrigerators started after the pandemic. Because it was so hard for people to get food, especially people who didn't have any money, were having issues. So there's an organization in Rockaway called Rockaway Mutual Aid, which cited a couple of refrigerators. This is the only one that's still existing. And so like I said, it started about 2.5 years ago, and this particular refrigerator was cited about a block away, and there was some issue with where it was, and some people in the neighborhood took the refrigerator and threw it in the ocean. But the host family here was nice enough to offer to house the refrigerator. So it's in front of a family's house on 92nd Street between Holland and Rockaway Beach Boulevard. We have a hard time keeping it full. As soon as it gets full, it's empty. We've had huge deliveries of food, and within 2 hours, it's gone. So, there's absolutely a need for food. People are hungry, and they have no money. And now, as of last month, the extra payment for EBT has dropped off, and so people are getting less money for their EBT and their, I'm sure that there's going to be a real lack of food every month at the end of the month.
So how does this community fridge work? People get donations and people just come and pick up whatever they need, or how does that work?
Well, people in the neighborhood come and they drop off food. Some people will go to the supermarket and buy $100 worth of food, put milk, bread, staples. Other people will bring canned goods. They'll go through their cabinet and get canned goods. And about 3 months ago, we got connected with a service of people. There's a network in Queens and Brooklyn that picks up food from different locations where there's food available. About a month ago, I picked up cheese. I picked up thousands of dollars worth of cheese that was donated by a cheese store. Really, really nice cheese. And we filled the whole refrigerator with cheese. Sometimes we get food from different movie sets. There's usually a pickup a couple of times a month at movie sets in Greenpoint and Long Island City. The problem is that there's nobody available to make the pickups. The host family sometimes will go and make a pickup, but we've got thousands of people living in Rockaway, and I don't understand why people don't step forward to say, hey, you know what, I'll make a pickup. If everybody made one pickup a month, the refrigerator would be full all the time.
Right. I just had on the screen a little while ago an article that I wrote back in September of 2020, shortly after that stunt that you mentioned occurred, where someone moved the fridge onto a jetty. I called it either classless or classist, perhaps both, because as we're seeing, it is a very necessary thing. During the pandemic, I helped establish a food pantry in Ozone Park, and I think we need more programs like that. The fridge is a great service, and hopefully more people can get involved and volunteer, like you said, even if it's a matter of just your time to pick up food, right? There are locations that are offering it, but you have to get it to the fridge.
Yeah. All we need is somebody who'll donate, probably 2 or 3 hours, an hour to get there, an hour to get back, and, extra time to put it in the refrigerator. But there's food out there. It's just a matter of picking it up. And, sometimes we get 6 or 7 alerts a day about food available, and sometimes there's nothing. But like I said, the movie sets are usually very good. They'll give us big trays of food, which we have to, put into small containers. But it's good. It's good. And people will go home with 2 or 3 meals.
And so let's say I wanted to get something out of the fridge. I wanted to get food. How would I go about doing that?
You just go and you take it. You open the refrigerator and you get it.
So is there anything stopping someone from just taking all of it and then writing out, or does that happen? Or
unfortunately, no. There's no way of stopping somebody from, like I said, we fill the refrigerator and sometimes an hour or 2 later, it's empty. There's nothing to stop people from taking more than they should. It's for everybody. So, if you're hungry, there's probably 10 or 15 other people that also need the food.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And where can people find more info about this? Is there like a link or page or something they can go to find out about the fridge?
Well, I started a Facebook page a couple of months ago because I got a little annoyed because nobody was filling up the refrigerator. I mean, the refrigerator was empty all the time. So I thought, okay, let's make a Facebook friend page, and then more people will be aware of what's happening. If there's food, if the refrigerator is empty. So that's how my major involvement came about, because before that I was putting in food 2 or 3 times a month. When I had some extra food or extra money, I would go and pick up some stuff. So the name of the group, the Facebook group, is Friends of the 92nd Street Community Refrigerator.
Okay.
And anyone, can go to the page, they can join. It's a private group. And, we talk about, what's available, what's not available. Right now, they're trying to build the shed around the refrigerator. So I think Becky was looking for people to donate supplies, plywood, and I don't know, some other building supplies. But we can always use help from people.
So for those who might be interested in obtaining some food, there's nothing that they have to sign up for, or they don't have to put their names down. In other words, they shouldn't feel ashamed anyway, right? They can just come and help themselves if they need food.
No, you just need to show up. Unfortunately, like right this minute, there's nothing in the refrigerator except somebody just put in a big wheel of cheese. But sometimes there's tons of milk and bread and all kinds of food, canned goods. It's all timing.
Is it monitored to make sure that the food isn't going bad?
Well, it doesn't last that long. The food doesn't last that long. When we bring in food from movie studios, what we do is we date it. So we'll, let's say somebody brought in a bunch of food today, we would date, we put today's date on it so that people knew that it was put in the refrigerator on that date.
Okay. I know some people had legal questions about operating a fridge like this and potential concerns about food going bad and what that might mean, any liability issues. And from what I'm seeing in the research that I've done, there are protections. There's even federal protection for this type of act, as long as you're not doing anything grossly negligent or any intentional misconduct. You do have shields from the law if you're acting in good faith to feed people this way. I know the Bloomberg administration was trying to crack down on some of that here in New York City, but by and large, this is a protected act, and there might even be First Amendment rights at play, because this is arguably an expressive activity as well. But it's interesting. It's definitely interesting, but some people were trying to say that it was unlawful to have a refrigerator outside, but they were confusing that with a law that applies to discarding large containers. So if you're throwing out a fridge, you have to be careful because of the automatically locking door, and they're afraid kids will get stuck in it and that kind of thing. But this doesn't apply to that at all, right? This is just a fridge that's set up, it's plugged in, it's operational, it's outside, and it's doing a good service for the community. Exactly.
And I believe the refrigerator issue about getting clothes in the refrigerator, it doesn't exist anymore because apparently the way they're made now, you can't lock yourself in a refrigerator.
Right. I think that's from like the old fridges from like the 50s and before, where they had like the latch on it that you actually had to like yank on to get through.
Yeah, I believe the penal code refers to large containers with automatically locking doors or lids. Right. So if they don't automatically lock, I guess, from the inside, it wouldn't even apply.
Yeah.
Right. And, thankfully, knock on wood, there hasn't been any problems with this refrigerator. And, I have access to more refrigerators. The problem is that we don't have places to host them. I reached out to a couple of different people, but we're having a hard enough time keeping this one filled.
Right.
To get, 2 or 3 would be great. If we could have one in Auburn and one in Far Rockaway, it would cover, the peninsula.
Now, the Mutual Aid Network had one on Beach 72nd Street, right? What happened to that?
Yeah, and that one, I'm not sure what happened. I think that it broke down, or it doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
And I think they didn't want to, it's a lot of responsibility to host it because, like I said, you have to keep it filled. You have to clean up. People come, they throw things on the floor. You got to clean up after people who come and, make a mess.
Right. There's a website, freege.org. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's got resources for community fridges. I think it even has a map showing where some of them are located around the world.
Oh, that's interesting.
That might be good. Can people add their fridges on those sites?
Yeah, I'm gonna post a link right now. Jay, can you put it in the public chat? I'm gonna put it here
Sure.
on the Zoom, but for those watching on Facebook and after the fact on YouTube as well, that link would be helpful. Freege.org.
FREEDGE. I see what they did there. Free.
Yeah, free fridge. Freege.
Yeah.
And then there's a link, find a Freege.
If there's anybody out there that is interested in hosting a refrigerator, let us know.
Yes.
Because the refrigerators, there's always refrigerators available. So we just need a place to put it. And of course, whoever hosts it has to pay the electricity.
Right.
So I guess that creates an issue also.
Right. And also, if you're a food pantry or any organization that sometimes has extra food, look into donating to a fridge like this.
Oh, sure. But I don't think anybody has extra food at this point. Maybe I'm mistaken about that.
Well, sometimes I know the food pantry that we've done in Ozone Park, sometimes there are some extra boxes at the end of the day that we're trying to get,
Now,
Yeah, no, that would be great if somebody could pick that up and bring it.
and what
Right
if
now
someone
we
wanted to
have-
get involved?
Right now, we only have two people besides myself that will go and pick up food. There's a girl who lives in the neighborhood who was like an angel. We didn't know where the food was coming from, but apparently she was making the same pickups. She had the same contacts that we have, and she was making pickups and bringing them to this refrigerator.
Okay. There you see the map. This is from freege.org, and it does have Beach 92nd Street on the map, you see.
Great.
Oh, wow. Somebody already put you on there.
Yeah.
Someone put you on the map. See what I did there?
Yeah. Is that Mr. Softy outside?
Mr. Softy's coming down the block. Yeah,
So you know that spring is here.
exactly.
It looks like there's another pin on this map here. I don't know if this fridge, let me see. This is Arvern, Almeida Avenue. Oh, this is the 72nd Street one. So I guess this one would need to be updated. That was probably the original one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that has to be taken off.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Sounds like something that's good to get some more volunteers to bring some food in as well. Might be, yeah.
Yeah, but again, if anybody out there that's watching this podcast is interested in helping, we're always looking for people to pick up food. You don't have to do it all the time. You can do it one time, but that's one time more that we have food.
Absolutely.
James in the chat asks, is the refrigerator plugged in? Yes. Lixa says, has the Wave been contacted to ask for community help?
Yeah, the Wave is aware of the refrigerator, and I believe that they did a story about it at one point.
Yes, they definitely did. And my article as well on that was in the Wave. And I think actually recently they had something in there. Apparently the council member put some food in or something. I think that was in the Wave.
No, she never put food in here.
No? Let me see what the story
I
says.
asked her. I went on Facebook on her page, and I said, we have this refrigerator. We always need food. And she said, the people should go to St. Rose, and there's a food kitchen there.
Oh, wow.
That was her response. Yeah.
Let me see. There was a Wave article. Let's see what it said recently on that.
Not a good response, really.
Oh,
I think
Her response? Yeah.
Yeah,
her response.
And listen, I know that all elected officials have discretionary funds. So, even if they donated $100, that's $100 worth of milk and bread and cheese that, we could fill the refrigerator with.
yeah. The city council members certainly do. Okay, so here it is. This was 6 days ago, March 22nd. It says, let me see. She delivered food to a refrigerator in Rockaway Beach on March 17th. Let me pull up this article.
That's interesting.
Maybe she heard your call. She finally.
News to me. Okay, well then she did something.
Let's see. It's not saying which one though. Is there another one?
There's only one refrigerator in
So it
Rockaway.
has to be, right?
Yeah.
She does say my office sponsors a regular hot food distribution at St. Rose of Lima Church. But after speaking with some local constituents, we realized there was more we could do to help those who might not be able to make it to those distributions. To that end, we partnered with Met Council NYC to receive packages of dry food and other goods and stock the fridge and the nearby shelves.
Well, that's great.
So it looks like, yeah, your advocacy worked there. I'm sure that was in response to your conversation.
That's what it sounds
Yeah,
like.
because, at one point I read that she had brought some boxes of food to a place in Howard Beach. And I said, wow, that's great. We have a refrigerator in Rockaway and it needs food. Is it possible that we could get, a donation there? And that's when she told me about St. Rose.
Right.
That was probably 2 months ago.
Okay. Well, you see, putting pressure on your elected officials helps.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Doesn't always work, but it's necessary. So no, that's definitely a good thing. Yeah, everyone watching, please get involved if you can. The link to the Facebook group is also in the chat on Facebook. So if you guys want to learn more about it, by all means, this is definitely good work that's happening here. So why don't we take a quick look, Jay, at our poll from last week, if I can pull it up, because we had an interesting question to pose to the people, right? Jay, you're on mute.
You're right. I am. Yeah.
So speaking of our elected officials and people that we entrust to do the work of the people, we were asking about prosecutors and if they should lose their immunity from civil liability. As it stands now in the US, thanks to a Supreme Court decision, prosecutors cannot be held personally liable for their misconduct. Of course, there is recourse. You can go after the government on the whole. You can seek to have your conviction reversed, potentially, but the prosecutor cannot be held personally liable himself or herself. And we asked if it was time to consider rethinking that, if somehow that would lead to a more fair system, or if it would do well to curb misconduct, or if perhaps there are other ways to do that. So it's actually a closer poll than you might expect, although I guess in recent hours it broke more one way. So it was pretty neck and neck for a while there. But let's see, the final result here, 65% yes, 35% no. So more people are saying yes, they should lose their immunity from civil liability.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And as we discussed last time, it can be a complicated issue. Like you said, we talked about last week about the potential for, hampering the prosecutors from being able to actually do their jobs. But at the same time, corruption, something we definitely don't want to happen. We don't want innocent people to be prosecuted for things. Right.
Well, here are some comments kind of giving both sides of the argument. One comment here says, yes, at the very least, when it is shown the misconduct was on purpose, they should be disbarred and prevented from ever being a prosecutor for anyone ever again, and should be a prison sentence. You mentioned that last week. The comment continues, we cannot continue to live in a society where prosecutors can play the game to convict someone with false evidence or just because they can, right? Now, a comment in response to that says, I think this is a good idea that is horribly difficult to execute effectively. Not only would proving intentional misconduct be difficult, but I think a lot of prosecutors would end up not pursuing cases they should, simply because they fear losing their license to practice law if it turns out the case was made with tainted evidence, regardless of their own involvement. So it does get to be a tricky issue. And we talked about the possibility of other ways to hold prosecutors accountable, because let's face it, if you're suing a prosecutor who maybe is an ADA working in the office, they're probably not going to have a lot of money to give you anyway, even if you were to win a lawsuit. So I understand wanting to hold them accountable, but is that the way to not the best way to even set the system up? Maybe there are other ways for accountability. I mean, I'd agree as a baseline, people should be losing their jobs if it's proven they're acting with misconduct, right?
I think like I take a stricter stance on that. If they're purposefully doing this misconduct that's going to take away someone's freedom, I think they should lose their freedom as well. I don't think they should just be like, oh, my bad, or okay, you're fired. Like if you were purposely trying to take away someone's freedom, yeah, you should go to jail.
Right. And I think you're talking about a very specific case that would need to be defined. Probably something like, all right, they have evidence, like you could prove that they had exculpatory evidence, right? Evidence that would show that the person was innocent. And they chose to suppress that, right? They knew about it, they had it, and they chose not to use it properly, right? Disregard it and pursue their case anyway. That's a very special case that I agree there should be a harsh penalty for doing that, whether that's jail time, I don't know, but they shouldn't get away with that. And what we're seeing is not only do people get away with it, oftentimes there's still prosecutors. Now, they don't lose their jobs. Right. There's no repercussions, it seems.
Right. And that was it. Yeah. And for those who weren't listening last week, there was that news article that came out that showed that there was misconduct from some prosecutors and that they're still on the job. And they had these notes about their jury selection that was pretty discriminatory. Singling out Italians and Greeks and Jews and blacks, and but they're still in the job.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, hey, there's got to be. Look, we have in our framework it says in order to form a more perfect union, I think we should always be looking at our systems to find ways to make them better, to make them more equitable. And to get better outcomes instead of just looking for certain agendas. So that's what I think.
Yeah, and it could be hard because this immunity, as we mentioned, comes from the Supreme Court. So if we can't get that addressed, maybe there are other solutions that we can pursue in the interim. Like I said, making sure they're not still prosecutors. Can we start there? Can we look at them being disciplined by the ethics committee, by the bar? Can we look at that? If we can't sue them, maybe there are other ways to hold them accountable.
Right.
So there's a question in the chat for you, Helene. They're asking if sandwiches would be accepted in the fridge.
Absolutely, as long as they're wrapped up. Because we get sandwiches a lot from movie sets and other places. It's marked, it's wrapped, it's marked, and there's a date on it.
Okay, wrapped, marked with the date. That's important. All right. Now, Jay, I know you wanted to discuss this proposal in New York that it looks like may become part of the state budget this year to ban certain gas stoves, right? At least new gas stoves. We're not talking about ones that are already out there, but going forward, the state is looking to move away from gas.
Yeah, it looks like lawmakers in New York are on the verge of enacting the first legislative ban on gas and fossil fuel appliances in new buildings, and that includes single-family homes. And so this seems to be something that's being pushed by Governor Hochul, and Democrats in New York seem to be championing it.
The New York League of Conservation Voters is behind this as well.
And some people are saying that this could be a model for the rest of the country to move away from these gas stoves.
I'm sure it will be if New York does it. And you know what? New York thinks of ourselves as a leader. Oftentimes we're not. We talk about how far behind we are when it comes to transportation, a lot of other areas, but maybe we will be a leader here. I do think that if this happens in New York, you will see other states follow suit because it is an important environmental issue, but it does seem to be a little bit controversial, right? There are some people who are pushing back against this.
Yeah, there are people pushing against it. It seems like Republicans seem to be pushing back against it. Not just in New York, but even in other states. This article mentions DeSantis. He's taken a stand. I think he's just being contrary, but he's saying that they will not take our gas stoves away from us. But I mean, listen, it's one to think about. Gas stoves have been around for a long time. For years, it's been pushed as a cleaner form of energy, clean gas type of thing. But then there's environmental concerns that we saw probably within the last 15 years when they're talking about fracking and how it can taint the water supply and cause structural issues.
Right.
So it's definitely something that needs to be looked into and considered.
Yeah, it says in this article that supporters see the potential law as a national model They hope can spur similar action by other states and the federal government to limit fossil fuel use in buildings, which are a major source of greenhouse gas emissions contributing to climate change. Now, are there people saying that, but they just prefer the gas stove? That's why they don't want to give it up? Or are they just stubborn to change? Is it about not being told what they can have in their building? What is the argument really against it?
I haven't seen a lot on why.
Because gas is more efficient. If you cook, there's nothing like cooking with gas. It's not the same. And I've been told that those what are they called? No, they're not convection. The new kind of electric
air fryers.
No, not air fryer. There's like this contact. Conduction, right? That's it. And apparently they're pretty good. But they're expensive, and it'll take people a long time to convert to getting a new stove. I mean, a new stove is $1,000.
Right. But this is for new buildings, so I don't think they're going to take it out of any existing buildings or make you change your stove.
Right.
No, not now. But you don't know what 5 years.
It could lead to that eventually.
Right.
There's also an exemption for restaurants too, so restaurants can still use whatever kind of cooking equipment that they want.
It's interesting because about 3 or 4 years ago, there was a restaurant opening here in Rockaway, and they were trying to rebuild. They were trying to build out, and it took them something like 6 or 8 months to get gas.
Oh yes, I remember that. Yeah.
Right. Now there was a assembly member who's saying, Democrat, Monica Wallace is saying that she would prefer that they, instead of banning it, put incentives for electric buildings through tax credits or proposals rather than trying to force this issue.
Right.
And then it wouldn't mean a ban. It just mean people would be also free to pursue other options if they wanted to, and just leave it on the table. But
yeah, we've talked about that generally, not as it relates to this issue, but the idea of using the carrot instead of the stick, right? You incentivize behavior that you want to see instead of punishing behavior you deem undesirable. We looked at that in the context of driving and how they're hitting drivers with all kinds of fines. And it seems like they're trying to make it prohibitively difficult to be a driver. Whereas we said, hey, maybe you should incentivize better mass transit. If you created more attractive mass transit options, maybe people would voluntarily drive less instead of trying to make it something you're trying to frustrate them from doing. I mean, you could look at something similar. Even, the plastic bag combo. I think there was some of that there also, right? They were making you pay for a bag, whereas maybe there would have been a way to do it where you incentivize not using it. It's always an interesting philosophical discussion when it comes to policy, right? Can you do it in such a way where instead of making people feel like they're being punished, you're actually rewarding the good behavior? Right.
Yeah. And that was, like you said, we mentioned that. And then on the flip side, we know what kind of situation that we're in as far as environmental concerns and climate change. And so maybe such drastic action is necessary. Maybe it's something that we should have started to do, incentivizing 20, 30 years ago. But now we're at the point where it's like, look, we have to do this or it's going to get worse. So,
yeah. And you know what? I think I'm less offended personally by this because it does seem to be something they're phasing in by having it apply to new construction. And they're not saying right now, everyone has to take the gas stove out immediately, and also maybe I'm biased personally because I'm not much of a cook. I've had gas, I've had electric, and I couldn't really tell much of a difference myself, but I don't really use it that frequently or that much,
Right. Now, Helene, you said you're in real estate. So this could play into the industry that you're in, especially if the new homes don't come with it. This is something that you would have to see, on a day-to-day basis. What do you think about that?
But I think, like you said, in new construction, you get what you don't have a choice. You can't get gas, going forward. So people will have no choice but to use the conduction ovens, conduction stoves, which actually are pretty interesting because you can actually put something on top of it. In other words, as soon as it loses contact with a pot, it's no longer hot.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if all of them are like that, but I was watching something recently. Yeah, you can, as soon as you remove the pot that's conducting heat, the heat goes away, so you can actually use it to put out platters of food or whatever you want. So it's actually better than having a gas stove. But I think it's going to take a long time for people to get used to it.
Yeah, yeah.
And gas stove has, and I believe it was Helene mentioned, like there's people who cook, chefs have an affinity for gas stoves because you have much better control over the electric stoves when it comes to cooking. But if the induction stoves are getting pretty close, then that is a good alternative. It sounds like one. I'm probably similar to you, Mike. Like I've always had electric pretty much everywhere I've been. My family's got gas here, but gas always kind of creeped me out because you've got this massive flammable tank sitting next to your house of gas. Like that just always freaked me out.
Yeah. California and Washington have already taken steps to do this, but they did it through building codes. New York would be the first state to do it legislatively if it happens. And they're also looking, by the way, at fuel furnaces, water heaters, and clothes dryers.
Yeah. So we'll see.
I can see more pushback from that, right? People don't want to not have a clothes dryer.
Right. But what happens, it's also not environmentally friendly to have electric. It's not good for the environment. So what's the difference?
I guess we have to
if you're creating electric, you have to be burning fossil fuels or something. I heard this morning on the news.
I don't think there's going to be a perfect solution, right? I mean, if we're going to cook, we're not going to go in the backyard and start a fire. We have to do something that's not going to be the most environmentally friendly.
Right. So what's worse, making electric or using gas?
I think a lot of we're using fossil fuels obviously for electrical grid, but also the so-called clean energy in nuclear power plants. It's probably what they're looking at. So if you're generating electricity from the so-called clean energy, then fossil fuels would be much worse. I say so-called clean energy because we still don't have a way to deactivate the radioactive waste from nuclear power plants. So it's not really clean. It's just kicking the can down the road. It's just not putting out stuff into the air right now.
And I don't think either one of you are old enough to remember 3 Mile Island.
I've read about it.
Yeah.
It was very scary.
That was in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Westchester. I remember that I knew people that left New York after that.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, the half-life of radioactive waste coming out of these nuclear reactors are, tens of thousands of years just for the half-life. So, how do we explain to someone 20,000 years in the future when they're digging up archaeological sites that the reason why their skin's falling off and their hair's falling out is because, we wanted to, play Xbox.
Lix in the chat says New York City, we don't have tanks. It's natural gas lines that come to our homes. Then she adds electric dryers take forever to dry. Yeah, I can see people having a problem with not having conventional clothes dryers anymore.
Yeah, this kind of brings to mind. I just read this in the past week, and it was a story about a guy, and I forget when he did it. It was probably like in the 50s or something like this. He did an ad, and he was selling for $49.99. He was selling solar clothes dryers for $49.99, and people paid in, sent him the money, and he sent them back a clothesline.
Yeah.
All right. He wasn't lying, I guess.
He wasn't lying. It's all in how you describe it, I guess.
Well, speaking of describing it, let's try to come up with a good poll of the week that doesn't require too much typing on your part, Jay. I know you like them short and sweet, right?
just because it can fit in the one area. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, let's give this a shot. The question of the week is, do you agree with the proposal in New York to ban gas and fossil fuel appliances in new buildings?
It's a good question there.
We'll see what kind of responses we get. You know, I do think that we're moving in that direction. Whether we get it this year or not, looks like we might, but I do think that New York is going to enact this and other states will follow suit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like with COVID, right? We've become very comfortable, very spoiled in certain things, and we have to, just like anything, we should reevaluate how we are living life and make adjustments that are necessary. You know, people didn't like what we had to go through during the height of COVID, but it was what it was. It was nothing, it was kind of out of our hands, right? If we're looking at this environmental concerns and issues, we got to look at some of these things. We got to look at fuel efficiency in cars. We've got to look at how we're burning fossil fuels. We got to look at materials that we're making things out of. And, we're going to have to make adjustments so that we're, able to go another couple thousand years.
Right. Yeah, I think it's hard for people to think long term, right? They just think about their own life and they don't want to be inconvenienced in their own life. And they think, what do I care? In 50 years, won't even be here maybe. So let me just enjoy it while I can. But we do have to think for our future, right? Our children, our grandchildren, and it's bigger than us, right? It's about our society and our planet.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The chat here, comment in the chat, I agree with Timid and Mike. Scala, it should be an incentive, not a punishment. Yeah, I mean, I think that's always a good philosophy if it makes sense. But I think you look at it on a case-by-case basis, right? Like you said, Jay, sometimes the situation is more drastic and requires a more drastic response.
Absolutely. I mean, I just was right before we started this, they were on the news talking about how allergy season has been extended by 15 days and allergies are getting to be more intense than they used to be. And it is because of climate change and the environmental concerns we're facing. And it's going to get worse. So, we're going to have to make some drastic changes and some cuts are going to be uncomfortable. But we've survived so much. We are very adaptive species. And, if we get out of our own way, we can make anything happen.
And COVID has shown us that, right? That we can
absolutely
adjust. And even after the pandemic, the world is different in many ways, and we've adjusted to it. It's the new normal in so many areas, but we don't even think twice about it anymore. So
absolutely. I mean, one of the most amazing things we saw during COVID was how quickly teachers pivoted to online classes when there was no infrastructure in place. It was just like, boom, let's do it. Like, we can make amazing things happen when we sit down and do it.
Right. Well, one of the amazing things, I guess, that we're trying to see is this assault weapons ban. And it's like the song that keeps coming over and over again, right? Every time that there's a mass shooting, we hear this. And we also see continued inaction on the issue. Last week, we did talk about New York at least taking a step to pass the state of origin law that I've been championing for a very long time, where now we'll see when guns are used in the state, where they came from. If we can trace the gun, we'll at least see, did it come from a state with lax gun laws? And this is an area, because guns are so readily trafficked across state lines, that requires uniformity and some federal action. The president, again, calling on that. Will we get it? With the way Congress is, it seems doubtful, right? And the fact that this happens every single time, like I said, it's crazy. Every time there's a mass shooting, we see calls for this, and it seems like nothing is getting done.
Yeah, I mean, for people listening, I'm sure you've been aware. I think it was yesterday, there was another mass shooting, another school shooting. Three adults and 3 children at an elementary school, Christian elementary school in, I believe it was Nashville. And yes, and the person who did it apparently owned 7 guns, had bought them legally, and committed this act with an assault rifle. So, yeah, it's like, here we are again. And the thing that was different that stood out this time, which was a little unusual, was the person who did it was transgender, a transgender woman, which I don't think that should play into a factor, but we know how polarizing society is right now. I'm sure that community is going to be getting some pushback from people like, oh, look, see, this type of thing when it's completely unrelated.
Yeah, no, everyone is sensitive, and there's all kinds of bigotry, to the extreme level now, and it's a mess that we're in. So I'm sure you'll see that, unfortunately. And I'm also seeing some people giving the president heat because when he gave, I guess, his remarks, he started off with a joke about ice cream, which seemed inappropriate at the time. But you do have to be very careful with what you say and how you say, and understand that these are sensitive times, and this is a very sensitive issue as well. So that's understandable.
Licks in the chat corrected me. It was a transgender male.
Correct. Yes.
The person was born female and transitioned to male. So, which in itself is unusual because generally they've been men. They've all been males. They've done these shootings, but yeah, I wish we could just stop that. Like this.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of who the shooter is,
right?
What is going on in a culture where this even happens repeatedly?
And I think that's it. I think it's a culture thing at this point. Like, people who say they want to ban guns and others who don't want to ban guns because they're, oh, it's constitutional right to bear arms. I think what needs to be talked about is that we're in a culture. Like, yeah, you can say guns don't kill people. They don't, but the people are somehow acting up and using those guns to do that. So there's some kind of a culture point here that needs to be addressed. Right.
And should we agree that someone who would do harm like this shouldn't have had those weapons?
Yeah.
Certain people, I would hope that we don't want to have those kinds of weapons, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I heard today that on the news that she had to hide the weapons from her family because her family knew that she was not stable. She acquired the guns obviously because I guess her psychiatric records were not public, that they could be checked on. But she was hiding the guns from her family because if they knew that she had the guns, they would have turned her in.
And it seems this time, the police did their job, unlike what we saw in that other shooting where it was elementary school and the police stood back. This force went in and they got an A+. They ended the situation. Although 6 lives were lost before that, but they went in and handled the situation.
They took him down, she in 6 minutes, which is phenomenal.
So yeah. So the question is, how long until we're here again? It's unfortunate.
Right. I saw Chris Christie was also criticizing the president for even calling for reforms around guns. And he was saying that you never politicize an issue like this. But is it really politicizing the issue to look for solutions? I mean, that is what we want our elected officials to do, I thought.
Right. Yeah.
Well, their job is to protect us. And, they had a local official from Tennessee on the news today, and she said, nobody in Tennessee votes. So there's nobody to vote against the people who are putting these guns, in our hands.
Yeah, that's a problem. Yeah, people have to, participate to be able to outnumber those who are fighting against this, and so that they can put people in that are going to fight for these changes that are necessary.
And that goes for everything.
Absolutely.
Right. For local things and federal things, and people need to vote. If they don't like what they see, they need to vote.
Absolutely. So.
Yeah, it's just frustrating, and I wrote articles on this, and I can pull up articles I wrote 10 plus years ago now. And everything I said in there, as far as policy or legislation I'm proposing, thinking of, applies today. I mean, like I said, we did get the state of origin law passed. I'm grateful for that. But as far as actual legislation that would concretely impact the availability of guns, as far as that goes, I haven't really seen much progress. We know that there was a federal assault ban a long time ago, and it was I guess sunsetted, and it was never renewed. But we've been singing the same song for decades now. Nothing is happening.
And for those that, and see, that's, I was going to bring up the same point. It was under Clinton. We had the assault weapons ban, and it lasted, and expired during Bush's term, and they did
2004, I think it was, right?
Yeah, and they didn't renew it. But all the people that are saying like this, what's going to happen if we don't have these assault weapons and this and that? Like, we didn't have them for a long time. We didn't have access to them for a long time. Nothing changed. No one came and got your handgun or your shotguns or anything like this. It was assault weapons, and so, it's really not a good excuse to continue fighting this stuff. So, it's just looks in the chat saying that why do European countries just do without making laws? I think she's talking about recycling. But I mean, this could also apply similarly here, because I think in other countries they're less of a gun society. Famously, the case is always brought up about Australia when they had the one shooting, and then they went in and banned everything, and there've been like nothing since then, or very, very low since then. And that was like a couple decades ago.
Right. Comment in the chat says they blame video games. We're not the only country that has video games. Yeah, that's true.
All right. No, it's a society thing. It's definitely something is happening in our society that is making people feel like this is a course of action that has to be addressed somehow. I don't want to go as far as just to put it all on like mental health issues, because sometimes I feel that's a cop out. But there's something in our society, the way that we're living, that is making this a regular occurrence, and that's what needs to be examined.
Right. And a part of me wants to say, well, it's just inherent in the fabric. It's part of what America is, because we come from that kind of cowboy mindset, and it's been romanticized for all these generations, and that's all true. But at the same time, this phenomenon of the school shooting is really a more recent one in terms of our history, right? So what's been happening lately in more recent history that's making this become so prevalent?
Right. And it's schools. And it seems like I'm talking high school, junior high school, elementary schools. That's there's something that has to be really looked at, and some real changes made. So,
yeah. And I think it requires action from all different angles. So yes, we do need to look at the availability of these weapons. We do need to look at mental health. We need to look at factors beyond that as well, cultural issues. But there's not going to be a silver bullet, I don't think, on this, right? It's going to be an all of the above approach. The problem is right now we're doing none of the above.
Right. Absolutely.
So yeah, definitely interested to hear from anyone out there on thoughts you have on this. Why is it happening so much, and what might we look at in terms of solutions here, and what can be done? With the amount of gridlock that we see in government, sometimes it feels like it's hard to get anything passed, even locally.
Right. Is there something that can be done at least at the community level to go around the government partisanship, and just are there any solutions that way? It might be one way that people might have to do it. If the government's not going to do it, the politicians are too busy fighting amongst themselves. Is there something that people can do at the community level?
Yeah, definitely more programs. Listen, more programs like the fridge. I think anything that can help people, I think is good. It can't do bad. I'm not saying that's going to be the solution to school shootings, but I think all these things are interconnected, right? If we take care of our people more, maybe we'll see better outcomes in our society.
Sure, I agree.
So, all right. Well, we like to give our guest the last word on here. Helene, we call it the bottom line, and it's whatever you want to leave the people with. It could be what we talked about, or just anything on your mind. What is the bottom line?
The bottom line is we have this great refrigerator here And like I said earlier, we're having trouble just keeping it full. So anybody that wants to volunteer to make pickups, to obviously to drop off food if they want to go to a supermarket and or even, we talked amongst the people in the group, that, sometimes if you go past a restaurant or a bakery at closing time, they're throwing away food. They're throwing away rolls or bagels or cake or whatever at the end of the day. So if you're going out to dinner and you're walking past a restaurant, you can say, hey, you know what? Do you have any extra food? I'd like to put it in the community refrigerator. And that's really easy. That's like a 15-minute thing. You get the food, you bring it to the refrigerator. That's it. And it's an easy way to just put some food in the refrigerator. And obviously, if anyone knows of a place that we could cite more refrigerators, that would be great too. And again, the Facebook page is Friends of the Community at 92nd Street Community Refrigerator. And, we love to have people, join our group.
Excellent. Thank you very much for all that you're doing and for coming on here tonight. Thank you to everyone for joining us, as always. Jay, where might people find us?
Find us on YouTube. Look up Nuance Show or Nuance with Mike Scala and Jay Carter. You get the video replays there, as well as some clips. Go in there, join the conversation, say things you want to say, interact. You can hit us up on Instagram, also at Nuance Show. And then if you're into podcasts, the audio goes out to wherever podcasts are at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, what have you, which automatically get pushed to your device. So subscribe that way as well.
Excellent. Thank you all. So everyone, as always, we've got work to do. We'll catch you next time. Have a good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.